This is Anish Chauhan and this is Equilibrium Security. It's time to tackle your biggest cyber security challenges head on. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of our Cyber Hot Seat. This time I am joined by Jemma Davis, our culture gem, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. But before I do, in building Equilibrium, I've put quite a lot of effort into culture. And I guess for me and the team, we spend a lot of time doing a day job. And I want people in the team to be passionate about what they do. I want them to not have that Sunday night dread, wake up on a Monday morning and, genuinely enjoy what they do for a living. And just as a little aside, being a descendant of Indian parents that came to this country in the 60s, this isn't my own personal insight. This is something I sort of semi-stole off somebody else, but I'll go with it anyway. They came to this country in the 60s. They weren't really concerned about culture. They had their incentive was to earn a living, do things that were foundational. And what they've done is they've given the next generation, which is kind of me, sort of second generation, the ability to find a passion, find something they're good at, find an enjoyable living, and that's this next generation has been much more concerned about their own well-being, and kind of rightly so, and harvesting that. I've kind of tried to create at Equilibrium, tried to create a good foundation of all of that. But that's just what I strive to achieve at Equilibrium. I am not an expert, but Jemma is an expert, aren't you?
Apparently. no pressure there.
No pressure. That was quite an intro. I like that intro, and maybe I should have told you it was going to be such a steep intro. But no, honestly, all joking aside, you are very good at this, and you have put a lot of effort into culture, and you've seen all of it really. But before we get into that, just like this is going to be quite a big piece for you to talk about, and it's quite insightful for anyone that doesn't know Jemma. But can you just talk a little bit about your personal background and what led you to being in cyber? Because to say it's unconventional is going to be an understatement. So can I just give you the first 5 or 7 or 10 minutes, or however long you feel it takes, to just tell us a little bit about your background and what got you to where you are today?
Sure. And I think with the length of this will lead everyone to know that we've actually spoken before, and that I can waffle on.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll try and keep to the point as much as possible and not go on too many side quests. But yeah, I started off life 2.4 children family, like mum and dad, and I've got a sister, and we had a cat. And from the outside world, we looked normal-ish, I guess, like an average family. We lived in Bristol between 2 gang territories, so that was an interesting exercise. It wasn't the most pleasant of environments. In a little Victorian 2 up 2 down, which my parents still live in. But behind the closed doors, it wasn't as all it was cracked up to be. My upbringing was not great. It was abusive, violent, neglectful, and that went on for a number of years until I kind of gave up on that and needed to get away from it all. Because I guess that a lot of circumstances, I wasn't academically bright. I don't think I'm naturally academically bright anyway. I'm more life smart and resilient, aware of my situation, and part of that is a result of childhood trauma. But everywhere I went, I was told I wasn't good enough. And I'm sure we've all, like your listeners will have had a school report that says, lacks concentration, must try harder, and there's been negative words said about them in some form. But the reality of my childhood was everywhere I went, I wasn't good enough. And it was at home. Why can't you be more like your sister? Why are you here? Why are you ruining things? And when I'd go to school, I'd get the same sort of treatment. You're nothing like your sister. Why can't you be more like her? Not anything to do with my sister. It's not her fault that everybody wanted me to be more like her. That is situation.
Yeah.
But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't be what I wanted to be, what they wanted me to
What
be.
they, yeah.
Yeah. And even sort of a year or so ago, I was talking to my dad and I said, like you created this environment where I was an outsider in your family. And he said, well, you're not supposed to be here. You were supposed to die. And I didn't know this until about a year ago that I was quite ill as a child. And so my parents sort of waited for me to not exist anymore. And that day never came. So then they were sort of stuck with someone that they were expecting not to be there. So, which is really sad. And, if that, I think if I've never been in that situation, but I think
Yeah.
I'd like to think if I was in that situation, I would be grateful for every minute that that person existed, but that
Yeah,
wasn't
and
the
I'm sure
case in my
everyone listening
family.
would is probably thinking exactly the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't the case, and I kind of was just getting in the way because nobody expected me to be around. So not a great situation. I remember actively giving up on life when I was about 8 years old. I thought this is really difficult. I remember vividly sat cross-legged on a scratchy carpet at school, thinking I can never be what anyone wants me to be. This is really hard. I don't know how much fight I've got left in me.
And that's sorry, that's massive as an 8-year-old, isn't it? To be able to think
Yeah,
that way, that must have
yeah,
that there's an enormous amount of emotional maturity.
yeah. I don't know if I knew that at the time,
Sure.
because you kind of, I knew that my situation wasn't the same as other people's. I knew it wasn't the same as my
Okay.
sister's, like
Right.
it
Hmm.
was, she lived in the same house as me, but we had very different lives.
Yeah.
Um, I think the first time I became aware that I didn't belong in this family unit that I was in, I was 3. And I remember thinking like, they don't love me. I'm
That's
not loved in
crazy.
this situation. So by the time I got to 8, it didn't feel like I was quite young to know that. It felt like this has been going on for a really long
For
time.
a while.
Um, but yeah, I guess looking back, I can think that that's quite sad. But at the time, that was my reality, and I just didn't really know any different.
Hmm.
But I just remember knowing it was really, really hard to keep doing what I was doing, and that
What are you doing?
there just wasn't really any point in doing that. Um, so I went through life just kind of trying to survive. And I continued to do that up until the point where I ended up in foster care,
Hmm.
which was an interesting experience. On one side, it gave me what and I guess an experience of what real families were like and what it would be
Okay.
like to be in a supportive environment.
Yeah.
Um, which I say did definitely change my life, but at the same time, there was this stigma about being a looked after child, and I think that still exists today. In
Mm.
terms of my head teacher, so I had moved schools, and my head teacher said, "We'll give you one chance, but if you step out of line, then you'll be excluded." And that's because I'm a looked after child. That's not because I've done anything. That's
Mm.
that's the stigma and the preconception of this
Yeah.
child is bad. That's why they're in the care
Hmm.
system. Um, Other kids weren't allowed to play with me because their parents viewed me as being the bad child and things like that.
Mm.
So, whilst I had found the comfort of people who, were actually caring for me, whether they were paid to or not, but there was a
Okay.
caring element to
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I still then was an outsider quite a lot in
Mm.
the world. So, yeah, I went through life. I ended up kind of not going to school too much. I got my 2 GCSEs in English literature and English language, so I can read things and I can say things.
Okay.
And that was my lot in life. At the age of 16, I left the care system, as was the case back then, and there was nothing out there in the world. So I
Mm.
became homeless at the age of 16. Lived in a
Crazy.
graveyard because, whilst I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't book smart, I was life smart. So I had
Mm.
realised that they lock graveyards at night, so I would be locked in and I would be safe.
And you'd be safe.
So
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, so I did that for a little while, thankfully not too long, and then I went and found a charity called East Bristol Youth Housing, who helped me kind of settle down and start a life. Um, and then I worked a lot because I couldn't afford to stay on a education.
Yeah.
So when I was 16, I worked I worked in a hotel in the day, so from
Hmm.
4 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And then in the evening, I worked in a pizza shop, so from 5 in the evening till midnight. And Life Smart taught me that if you work in hospitality, you get free food. So I'd get my breakfast and my lunch and my dinner
Yeah.
for free while I was working on shifts. And the days where I
Yeah.
didn't work, I didn't get any food. Um, because it's really, really hard to sustain yourself when you're 16 and you've got
Sure.
rent and bills to pay and you don't really
Yeah.
understand the ways of the world.
No, no.
Um, so then I guess I found myself being a teenage mum at the age of 17, single mum
Hmm. Yeah.
to a lovely, lovely girl. And then I realized that I needed more money and I couldn't work the hospitality. So I worked
Hmm.
in a college reception during the day, call center in the evenings, and then a bar um, after I finished my call center. So I worked really hard at this, like a
So
theme.
so three jobs at this point. Yeah.
Yes, at the age of sort of 17, 18. Um, so the hard work has kind of been given up, but working hard because I wasn't book smart, so I had to prove
Well,
that
yeah.
I was worthy. Um, and so yeah, I guess everything that I've done from that point of having my child and then deciding not to work in hospitality and do officey type jobs and bar
Hmm.
work meant that I could be a more stable, I guess, mum for her.
Yeah.
So I continued down that road, and during all of my roles, I would volunteer for things. Oh, does anybody know how to do this? I'll learn
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
because I became aware that if I learned new things, then I would earn more money.
Yeah.
And then they would give me more skills to move on, either at the same company or move on. And as we all know, there's very little in the way of progression when you're, I guess, a worker bee in terms of
Sure.
staying at the same company. You do
Hmm. Of
tend to have to move on. So I'd
course.
move jobs quite a lot. So yeah, I went into office work and kept volunteering for different opportunities, which led me then into a career in marketing.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, sorry, before I went into marketing, I worked for a charity that supported adults with learning difficulties,
Yeah.
and I developed this passion for wanting to try and help people,
Hmm.
and for them to access the world around them. So this was during, I guess, David Cameron's reign, where he was doing big society, and basically he shut down a
Right.
lot of care facilities,
Mm.
and then a lot of people with support needs were kicked out into the community, a bit like I was kicked out into the community when I was
Right.
16, and
Yeah.
they had to build a life for themselves.
Hmm.
Didn't necessarily have independent skills, so it's quite
No.
a risky environment. So I decided on a voluntary basis to teach them life skills. So I would go to a day centre on a Wednesday afternoon, and I would teach them how to recognise their own money, how to turn on a computer, how to write
Yeah.
CVs, and basic independence skills. I mean, by no
Sure.
means are they going to pass an IT qualification or become accountants, but
But
they
yeah.
it meant that they could wander into a pasty shop and not hand over their purse or wallet, and so
Hmm.
they became safer.
A little bit, but a little safer. Yeah.
Yeah. Famously, I mean that was voluntary, but famously, support work and things like that don't pay very well.
No.
So then I went into sales, and I'd done sales in the past, so I had a bit of a
Hmm.
sales background. And then realized that salespeople don't necessarily have what they need because the marketing people don't know what the salespeople need. So then I decided that I would retrain in marketing, in the days before YouTube,
Yes.
things like that. So I
You had to
learned
go and
how
get a
to do
book.
marketing. Yeah,
Yeah.
went to the library, got a book, learned how to do marketing things, and then became what we call a direct response marketing person. In that,
Mhm.
what that means is I tell you to buy shoes, you buy the shoes.
Yeah.
So I serve you some sort of content, and it influences a decision or a behavior that you're going to make. So I was quite good at getting people to buy the shoes.
Yeah.
Um, and so that marketing career then took me to doing some marketing for OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm trying to get to the point.
No, no, no. I'm getting excited because this is getting to the interesting bit. No, sorry,
Yeah,
not that the rest of us wasn't interesting.
the
That was
rest of
fast.
it was really dull.
Yeah.
That's fine. So OWASP got in touch with me, and they were putting on the first OWASP Summit, which was a conference, 5-day conference, in Bedford, in a forest, where we were bringing 200 of some of the top minds across the world, in cybersecurity, to a forest to kind of work together and solve problems. And I didn't know anything about cyber. Cyber was something that, I just did my annual training, did my 20 minutes of infosec training, which didn't mean anything to me. And I couldn't tell the difference between that and data protection training, but
Sure.
I did my training. My boss stopped complaining that I hadn't done my training. So that was it, served a purpose. So then I ended up in a forest with 200 of the most impressive global chapter leaders from OWASP,
Yeah.
all in one place, 200 of them there. A couple of days in, WannaCry hit. I don't know what any of this means. I don't know. The cyber people are barely making eye contact with me. They're talking about WannaCry. They're talking about viruses. I know what, antivirus is because I've got it on my computer. That's about as much as I know about any of this sort of stuff. So everything went out the window because, all of the chapter leaders from OWASP are all like, we're doing cyber things now and we're not talking to you, and you just feed and water us, and we're not doing the conference schedule and all that sort of stuff. But that was the moment where I realized that cyber was quite important and it was actually impacting on real people. So,
yes.
Which I hadn't cottoned onto until this point. when real people can't access doctor's appointments, or can't go to the dentist, or whatever it is, when you can't access healthcare, that has an impact. And anybody who has heard my name before will know that I'm always banging on about let's do it for my nan. And when my nan is impacted by something, that is when I'm not okay with it, because you don't mess with my nan because she's the best person in the world. So I worked out that this was really important. I living in a forest with all of these cyber people for 10 days, in its entirety. And on the last day, I said to one of the people that was organising this conference, I just don't really know how I'm going to wake up tomorrow and not hear cyber, cyber, cyber. This is really weird. I've got a bit of Stockholm syndrome, like, can't imagine this. And he said, come work with me. And I laughed hysterically and then got in my car and drove home. So I was really tired. It was a long week. A couple of days later, I had a 4-minute voicemail with a job description saying, seriously, like, come work with me. I didn't know most of what he was talking about. I couldn't understand it. It was all cyber stuff. Didn't know what he was on about. So I played it cool. I sent him an email and said, hey, just picked up your voicemail. Signal was really bad. Here's the bits that I got. Like, can you clarify? And he said, no, come to London on Wednesday. This was on a Sunday, I think. Come to London on Wednesday. We'll talk in person. So the bit that I've missed out on all of this story is that I'd been made redundant, so I was quite poor at this point.
Okay.
And was freelancing, and that's how I ended up working with OWASP. So I get the mega bus to London for a whopping £7. It took forever, and it smelled like
Megabus.
sick. I was very conscious of not spending money because I didn't know when I was going to get any again. So I go to London. The guy hands me a laptop and he says, can you build, it was in Jira, can you build some custom Jira workflows? And he just kind of described the situation to me, and I worked it out and then went, here, is this what you want? And he was like, yeah, great, signed a contract. And that was with a global e-commerce brand, to sort out their incident response processes, which was a bit mad, as I thought was a bit mad. He told me if I can put on a conference as WannaCry hits and make sure everybody is fed and watered and everything's moving smoothly, then I can run an incident. Right? And he said event management is the same as incident handling, which is factually accurate now. I was like, I need the money, so fine, I'm a single mum, let's do it. So I started off my career in incident handling for a global e-commerce brand. Within 6 months I was head of infosec there, and then I was quite tired after a couple of years.
I like how you just quickly just glazed over that. 6 months head of infosec, that's fine. That was based on everything you'd experienced so far in life, that was a walk in the park. He's kind of
I mean, I was a bit baffled by it, but then every day I'm baffled about how I've got to where I've got to. Every day I'm a bit confused about what I'm doing. Because if I look back, this future wasn't promised to me. No one was saying
No,
to me, oh, you can be anyone you want
do
to
this and
be.
you'll do
People were
that. Yeah,
saying, why are you in this room? Please
yeah.
leave. So
Yeah.
it's very, very odd situation. Even today, I mean, I woke up this morning and thought, this is, today is crazy, tomorrow is crazy. There are
Mm,
so many things that I'm doing, that I'm exposed to, opportunities that I have that I just couldn't even comprehend, even
mm,
yesterday, that these opportunities would be in front of me, let alone 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So yeah, no, I became head of infosec at this place, and was mind blown by that. But I think I did that for maybe 2 years, and then I was really tired. Um, and I realized that everything in my life had led me to the point where I needed to be, which was I'd taught people with learning difficulties.
yeah.
So I understood the knowledge transfer process, how to teach people.
Okay.
I'd done marketing, direct response marketing. I'm going
Hmm.
to influence your behaviors, no different from phishing. Right? I'm going to
Sure.
give you something,
Yeah,
you're going
yeah.
to take an action. So I know
Hmm.
how to influence your behaviors, and I know how to transfer that knowledge to you. And I now understand the incident response process, cyber compliance, all of that stuff. So if I smush all of that into one thing,
Yeah.
I could be something that could make a difference. And I remember talking to a guy called Mario Platt, who's now, I think he's at LastPass as CISO. And I
Hmm.
said to him, I don't know where I belong. And he said, that's where you belong. You combine all of that stuff
Yeah.
and you will make a difference. So I thought, yeah, sod it, let's do that. So that was, I don't know, many, many years ago.
Mm.
I decided to rebrand myself as somebody who could change behavior and culture and challenge the 20 minutes of trading every year.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly worked out that I was early into that marketplace and that not
Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily many people wanted that.
So just as a
Um,
time frame reference, what year is this now?
2019.
Okay. Yeah. So that's quite useful to know because it's still it might not seem like that long ago, might depending how young or old you are, but that in the scale of things of where we are now with a lot of this, that is very much in its infancy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I
Mm.
wouldn't say that we've progressed that much, unfortunately, over
No.
let's say five years, because it's probably
Yeah.
tail end of 2019 that
Yeah.
this was the case. I don't think that we're anywhere near as far forward as we need to
As
be
we
in
should
terms of
be. Yeah.
behavior
Hmm.
change. I think
Yeah.
I work with companies all over the world, of all sizes, and there's still the annual training for 20 minutes. We get Cyber Month in October, so they might do
Yeah.
something interesting there. And there's very little that's being done in terms of behavior, culture change. We have huge issues that our young people are coming through school without any cyber knowledge or how to
Hmm.
protect themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and it really upsets me that we all know what to do when there's a fire alarm, but we don't know what to do when we get a phishing email. And that's
Exactly.
because it's been made far too complicated,
And
for
the
the
and
average
the
person.
and the association between that and a cyber attack are so like,
Yeah,
well, there is no association really.
yeah, yeah. And we're so overexposed to online scams that it almost
Yeah.
becomes a so what.
Becomes, yeah. So thank you for all of that background because, if our listeners were thinking, what has this got to do with the cyber hot seat? It is relevant. But, it's kind of like culture fit is massive. It's so important to say it. And I guess it's easy for me to say, for an organization that started Equilibrium, like as the owner of Equilibrium, and I've started it relatively small, but large organizations, I guess, to finish my point, the smaller organization that we are, it's probably, it might seem like it's easier to do to get the culture right, but large organizations, um, how difficult is it, and from your experience? I know you've worked with a lot of these organizations. How difficult is it for them to get the culture right, or how bad are they at getting the culture right?
Um, some industries are definitely worse than others.
Right.
Um, so I guess the bit we kind of have skimmed over a little bit is Culture Gem and who Culture Gem is.
Sorry.
And I don't
Yeah.
really want to do a sales pitch because, I'm not going to take over. But So Culture Gem as an organization works with companies of all sizes to help
Hmm.
with the embedding culture at the heart of security at the heart of culture.
Yeah.
So we are sort of in a privileged position of we can kind of choose
Hmm.
like what sort of organization we might want to work with. And the other side of things is because of my background, we developed a training platform
Yeah.
where it's different from the annual 20 minutes. It
Hmm.
takes everything that I know about the world into account. We have fishing simulations that are different, training that's
Hmm.
different, that works for everybody. So I'm not saying that you have to have Culture Gem as a product to change a culture, but where I was going with this is um, we don't necessarily work with organizations who are just trying to tick a box. We don't
Hmm.
necessarily work in industries that are highly regulated because it is really difficult to change the culture.
It is, yeah.
So that could be things like financial services that are really
Hmm.
like, there are processes that they go through, but it's really difficult to work on any kind of transformation. And we will work on transformation at all levels,
Hmm.
and not just on a culture perspective, because culture, as you know from building
Hmm.
equilibrium, it's not just a thing that we talk about, it's within everything.
Yeah.
um
You can't go to a vendor and say, "Can I buy some culture?" Because I need to tick that
yeah,
box.
unless you come to Culture Jam and then we'll fix it for you. I joke. I'm gonna stop plugging, but yeah, so it can be challenging. It does need sponsorship at all levels.
Yeah.
The C level or executive senior leadership team need to know that there's an issue and be brought into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 5 years ago when I entered the market into doing something different, it was hard. It
Yeah.
should be easier than it
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
to make that difference. I still think that there are some excellent CISOs that really, really get it and are bought into it. And
Yeah.
there are still some bare minimum, we're going to meet our compliance standards. And if that's the case, that's the view of the CISO, that's the view of the chief execs, if we're just going to do the bare minimum, we're going to take our bonuses at the end of the year and hope that nothing goes horribly wrong,
Yeah.
then you're never going to change that culture. And it's not necessarily an organization that I want to work with or that potentially you want to work for.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, everyone has their different motivations. The sad thing of people not coming on that journey or even understanding why that's important is, I think it was 2018, they used to say something like 87% of cyber incidents were down to
Yes.
human error,
Hmm.
human action. Now the stats are more like 95%.
Yeah.
So in that less than 10 years, the situation has got worse, and we're going to
Hmm.
still keep rolling out tech. The cyber
Hmm.
tech will protect us. The
Yeah.
modules, the monitoring, the
Hmm.
policies will protect us. In reality, if you don't invest in the people and the culture of those people, and the knowledge transfer
Hmm.
of how to keep themselves safe. It's not about keeping your organization safe because they don't care about that. Like just like I didn't care about it when I worked
Yeah.
in marketing. I did my training and then everyone got off my case.
Hmm.
If they don't care about their own personal safety and you don't invest that in that,
Hmm.
you are never going to change that statistic. People are still going to be the reason that there's compromise, and that is not on them. That's not their fault. It's not
No.
their job. It's not in their job description, and they have never ever been taught how to do it properly. And
No.
20 minutes of training every year is not the thing that's going to help you train that into them.
No, that is absolutely right, because it's not about like going in and ticking a box doesn't change the outcome of how someone thinks. It's getting someone to change behaviors is notoriously the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I have teenage daughters. To getting them to do something that they're so used to doing and don't want to do is so difficult. It's same with
Mm.
all of us. If we want to get fitter, we want to get healthier, we want to change the way we are and be. It's incredibly difficult to do, and it comes from repetition, it comes from culture, it comes from understanding why and all of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, changing the culture is absolutely massive, isn't it?
Mm. Definitely. I
And
think the why is critical, that
the
we don't
why is
explain. Like,
critical. Yeah.
just choose a strong password. Why? What is, like, a mix of characters? But that's bad. Don't tell people to do that. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Tell them
Yeah.
to do the thing that actually helps them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost like
Yeah.
treating them like a little child when they ask why all the time, but you've got to get to the bottom of it. And you can't just go because I told you and I'm your parent.
Mm. Yeah.
You touched on something really interesting, and I'm a big, I could do a whole pod just on this, but you mentioned work ethic. So, right, did you mention work ethic? I think you alluded to work ethic.
Yeah.
And it's caused me problems. I've seen the organisations we worked with, it's causing problems. And what I mean by that is somebody might interview really well, they might come across like a good fit, they might have the right approach to working, and they even might have the right working culture. But the work ethic possibly isn't there, and that is really hard to find. And maybe at the risk of sounding like two old people, I'm not going to make any dispersions to our listeners about how old you may or may not be. Talking about the kind of
21, clearly.
Younger generation. Your circumstances, your background has given you an incredibly strong work ethic. Some of mine, I haven't, obviously, and most people listening won't even be able to comprehend what you've been through, but some circumstances give you that work ethic. It might be background, it might be ethnic background, whatever it might be, but it's really difficult to find in the industry right now, isn't it?
Definitely. And I do think it comes from your, like, culture at home, right? The background, your life story and all that sort of stuff. It's really interesting. So, like, my family is predominantly academic, right? So my sister is, my parents are. My extended family, my uncles, my aunts, not academic at all. And so my sister, as I kind of mentioned before, we grew up in the same house, let's say, with the same socio-economic factors around us. Let's assume. So had we have had the same childhood experiences, you would assume that we would, be on the same sort of path. The reality of that is she had access to different opportunities to me. And as I said, like, people kept saying to me, why can't you be more like her? She's academically bright. She takes after my parents, which might mean, might explain some of they preferred. There's a difference, you're not supposed to have your favorite child, but there was very obviously a favorite child, and that still maintains to this day. But my sister was sort of promised this life from everyone around her. Oh, you're so clever, you're going to go so far in life and all that sort of stuff. And because she was academically bright, and the world is set out on academic attainment, like, you go through school and the point is to get quite a bit of paper that says you're smart. And she could do all of that, so she just didn't actually ever try to do any of that because it was almost natural to her. I'm sure she did try. She won't listen to this because I'm on it, but she might. If she heard this, she's not a terrible person, but yeah, I think life kind of academics came very easily to her. Social skills, social ability, absolutely not. If she was walking down the road and there was a hole in the floor, she would fall in that hole. She wouldn't be able to work out to get out of it. She'd tell you how big the hole was and have worked all of that, and what it was made out of, but she wouldn't get out of it. Whereas I would have seen the hole coming a mile away and would never have fallen into it. So because she was almost promised this life of academia and you're going to go so far, she didn't learn how to try hard at anything. So she now just works, and she shows up and she does the bare minimum. She's really annoyed that she doesn't have any of these opportunities for progression in a work sense. Whereas I go to work and I'm working 10 times harder than everybody else because I'm trying to prove all the time that I'm good enough because I didn't have that academic
even if
background,
you don't need to,
right?
You actually don't need to anymore.
I mean, do it. Someone who's going to work out that I'm an imposter at some point and be like, that mental person, let her in, and now we're stuck with her.
Now what?
But yeah, so there's that interesting that I always think it's interesting that if you look at us, we are so different. We had such different backgrounds, but we lived in the same house, and our formative years were in the same place. But she didn't develop a work ethic, and I did.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you look at my uncle, who's not academically bright, my dad is academically bright. My dad had a reasonable career. He got to a level, like, he was, I'd say, let's say he's middle management.
Sure.
He's an average person. He had an
Yeah.
average job. It was my uncle, who was not academically bright, left school at 14, went to work on a farm,
Mm.
started, messing about with screwdrivers and playing with tractors and all that sort of stuff, has gone much further in his career because he's had to try harder to get there at every
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's an element of that. And I don't know if we can say that that's a good thing, in that we're
Mm.
almost trying to prove ourselves on a daily basis.
Sure.
Both of us do that. My aunt's the
Yeah.
same. She's not academically bright. She works much harder than my mum ever did because she has to, because life's not that easy when you're not
Hmm.
academically bright.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are struggling with the younger generations and their
Hmm.
ethics, and partly because they know it'll all be okay.
Yeah.
Like, they're in
Yeah.
a world where it all just sort of works out.
We've
COVID happens,
removed
you don't
we've
go to
removed a
school, you still get your exam results.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We've removed the threat of what happens if you don't get a good education
Mm. The
or
state will
don't get a good,
support
yeah,
you.
the stable support. Yeah.
Minimum wage is getting
Mm.
close to being a livable wage.
Yeah.
When I was on a minimum wage job, you couldn't survive
No.
on minimum wage at all.
No. No.
Um, and this is not that I'm besmirching minimum wage. I absolutely can understand if I had a choice to make of, I could go and work stacking shelves, which is
Hmm.
and I've always thought that, it didn't take COVID for me to go, those are essential people. If we don't have
Sure.
shelf stackers, we haven't got food because we are not
Exactly.
able to hunt and gather ourselves anymore.
That's right.
But would I go and get a university degree, which I don't have? I've got two GCSEs. If
Mm.
I was going to earn the same working as a skilled or unskilled worker,
Hmm.
would I have got myself into that level of debt? And I don't think we're doing that unless we've got a cause, and it's like a motivation
Mm.
isn't around the financial side of things, because realistically our junior
Mm.
doctors are earning the same as shelf stackers.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely are.
Mm.
um and equally, essential. But that concerns me is that we're going to run out of talent who are
Mm.
motivated by the cause pretty soon. And I'm
Yes.
very much motivated by the cause. I want to do a good job all the time, and
Hmm.
I want to look
Yeah.
after my nan because she's the best. And so I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
there to be doctors because then they're going to look after me nan. I can't
Yes.
do medical things. I'm not academically smart.
No. And that is like, yeah, we don't want to go too sort of deep into that one point, but I think it's really important to know that yeah, there is a general, and I don't think cybersecurity is unique, by the way, in this field. I'm sure every industry has the same challenges, but there is a problem with work ethic to some degree. People might think, okay, there's people who are coming out of university or coming into their entry level job are demanding what we might consider an excessively high salary because they're then suddenly not motivated by the cause. They're motivated by, actually, this is what I can earn if I'm in cyber. Now,
Mm.
it brings me slightly tenuously into diversity, and that I think we've spoken before, haven't we, about the cybersecurity industry having a degree, perhaps a greater degree of diversity, and maybe acceptance or actually a welcoming of diversity because of the skills that certain aspects of diversity bring. Now, have you seen okay, no, how what's your take on it? 'Cause I felt like I was gonna lead you then with my question, but what have you seen and what's your opinion on diversity in cybersecurity?
So, yes, to some degree, I would say you are right in terms of, if we talk about neurodiversity, we
Hmm.
are
Yes.
a varied bunch of misfits and,
Yeah.
interesting folk. Very much, I would suggest, probably way above the curve in terms of
Hmm.
the neurodivergence and neurodiversity and the diversity of thought to some extent. Just
Yeah.
like, bear with me, I'm going on a little rant, and I'll try not to go on a side quest.
Okay.
In terms of gender diversity,
Okay.
absolutely,
Yeah.
we are way below the curves. I think, I forget what the latest figures are, 17-18% of cyber people are women.
Oh, really?
It's really, really tiny.
I'm
And
surprised at
we're
that figure, actually.
we're actually losing women as well, so it might be
Right.
lower.
Okay.
So women aren't staying in the field.
Right.
And I couldn't very much imagine from my own personal experiences why that might be the case. It's definitely harder to be heard.
Mhm.
And I'm very conflicted. I get asked about this all the time in terms of like, what can we do to get more women in? I'm here, I'm doing my bit, I'm
Mhm.
shouting about it, I'm doing the best I can. My experience of being a woman in cyber is, like I say, they opened the door, I wandered in, and now I'm here and
Mm.
I'm very accepted.
Yeah.
However, when I first meet people and they don't know who I am, and
Mm.
they don't have to know who I am, I'm not by any means a big deal. Like, but if we don't have like a shared network and they don't
Mhm.
know who I am, I have to convince somebody. I have to do the I am good enough thing.
Right.
You just do
Okay.
the comms side of things because they don't get
Mm.
the cultural change.
Mm.
They don't necessarily know, especially techies. And there is,
Sure.
unfortunately, there's I guess, a persona of people who are
Mm.
worse, which is the middle-aged white men, been in tech 20 plus years, that
Yeah.
are not, that aren't the nicest to be around
No.
to diverse individuals. So I'd say the women in cyberspace, there's a lot of work to be done. We're definitely losing people. Been a lot of research into that.
Mhm.
Neurodiversity, yep, we're definitely up there. In terms of ethnic diversity, I don't think I've not read any research, but I don't
Okay.
think we're on the curve there. I think it does seem to be a bit still pale in the
May
space.
Maybe. Yeah,
Uh,
I think you're possibly right there.
just from my
Mm.
experiences of the companies I work
Yeah. Yeah.
with. So in some areas, yes,
Mhm.
there's diversity in cyber. We still, I think, run the risk of groupthink. If we look and sound and smell like each other, therefore we all
Mhm.
think in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we do enough to give people a voice in cyber, because the neurodivergent people that we've got that are
Mm.
thinking differently don't
Yeah.
necessarily have a platform to speak, because the
Mm.
bigger, I guess, the more prolific, stereotypically cyber people are shouting too
Are
loudly.
shouting the loudest. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
So
it. That.
sorry if that undoes where you were going, but
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't actually. So it does. It highlights it that it is a challenge, and that's what kind of the point of the pod, right? Is to kind of let's talk about some of the challenges that we have in. Let's think about how what is wrong. What are
yeah.
things? What are our listeners facing the biggest challenges against? So um, I we've spoken quite. I won't say negatively, but we've highlighted, we've shone a light on all of the challenges and kind of some of the issues and things like that. But let's flip it around. When does culture work really well, Gemma? When have you seen culture working really well in a cyber team? What are the signs? What does it feel like day to day? How does it, like, when do things just click almost? Well,
Mm.
actually, no. Yeah, ignore the last statement because they don't just click, do they? Because that's almost a just thing. But when do things work well?
It's that is I'm going to really, really struggle to answer that, and I feel like I'm being all doom and gloom all the time in this conversation. But from my experience of working with cyber teams and trying to change the culture is, I get left to my own devices. So if I go and work with an organization, is they drop me in because they want it fixed, but they don't necessarily want to do it themselves because they want
They
to
don't want to be
focus on the
involved in
tech,
the
right?
process. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the people side of things. I don't
Okay.
worry about the people side too much. So
Right.
and if you look at the amount of security awareness or security behavior or that kind of the jobs that are being
Hmm.
advertised, they're few and far between. I was interviewing
Yeah.
someone recently and they've done a master's in cyber and they're really keen on the people side of things. And I had to say to him, like, we love you. Like I love the
Mm.
idea, it's great that you're so passionate, but don't think that there's any career progression, because unfortunately at the moment I can't see any career progression in the space at
Mm.
all. It does still seem to be the poor relative. We're
Mm.
still doing the annual training, still worrying about regulation, ticking boxes. So there doesn't seem to be this big shift between, there's not like a 50-50 in recruitment in terms of
No.
like the human side, people-centric
Mm.
cyber, human risk management, and technical stuff. We still value the tech over anything else.
Over everything else. Yeah.
So like what does good look like? When does it click? I very much, and I don't know, I would welcome the opportunity for anybody to say, hey, I'm in the human space and I have
Mm,
seen this. But it does seem to be, oh, we've got the human people there, so they'll deal with that, and we can worry about the buttons and the lights and
mm,
the flashing
yeah.
and the noises and all that sort of stuff. So within a cyber team, obviously there are CISOs that will bring in, they invest in that area, and there'll be a
Hmm.
team. I think it's much harder to fight for budget and resource in those teams
Yeah. Hmm.
than it is to get another incident handler or another AppSec engineer or whatever it is that you're looking for. But the
Mm,
business case for humans is for human side of cyber is much more challenging. And the reason I think that is the case, so I'm not going to just be all doom and gloom, we're looking at the wrong metrics. Because
mm,
actually, if you're doing the cultural, behavioral cyber stuff well, you should see a less of a need for that incident handler, less of a need for the tech that's monitoring. Because
yes,
what
I
you
like
should
that.
see is humans rising up and saying, hey, I saw a thing, should I worry about that?
Yeah.
So what you then need is less technical ability and more humans, and I
Hmm.
guess people skills, in terms of, let me be able to have a conversation with you, fact find, without turning the interrogation lamp on this poor person
Hmm.
who's
Hmm.
seen an email or found a device, and
Yeah.
all of that mean stuff that typically happens. So if you're doing it right, you'll see a decrease in incidents, an increase in suspicious events of people reporting events
Yeah.
before they become
Before they
incidents,
happen. Yeah.
more communication towards the cyber team of, hey, should I worry about this? I'm just about to do this. What do I need to be aware of? So the skill set should shift if you're changing the culture,
Hmm. Yeah.
because the metrics will change, and the metrics then will allow you to invest more heavily in the human side of things if
Yes.
you're looking in the right direction. It's not completion stats, it's not engagement rates on intranet pages, it's
No.
not how many people showed up to a webinar. It is the holistic view of stuff being better, less policy violations, more questions, fewer incidents,
Mm,
more events ahead of the severity, and that's where you make a real difference. um, it's not a quick job.
no.
Um, I worked on the pandemic response,
Hmm.
um, and I remember the CISO, great guy. Still, we have been friends ever since. But he called me and he said, "Oh, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to change all the behaviours within 6 months." And I laughed at him. I was like, "You're not going to do that within six
Mm,
months."
mm,
I've worked
yeah.
with organisations that have done that for 2 years, and they haven't got to the point where you want to get to. So it's nice that you're aspirational, and I love that you've called me, but you're not going to get there in 6 months,
No.
because you have to change the behavior of people and
Yeah.
get buy-in from every level. Now,
Mm,
thankfully, with the pandemic response, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I don't very often talk about it, but the CEO for Test and Trace was Dido Harding. Dido Harding
hmm.
famously was at Talk when
Yes.
when it all went horribly wrong at Talk. So Dido
Yeah.
is very, very much bought into, I'm never going through that experience again, because she
Yes.
was in front of the news, she was,
Mm,
lights flashing in her face, being
yeah.
interrogated, and she
Mm,
did not do very well in that
sure.
situation. But when you've got a CEO who has been in that situation, they will
Mm,
never go through it again. So
hmm.
I had, from her level, I could get anything done because
Yeah.
she didn't want to go through that experience again.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
quite often situations where, and I don't want to wish it on anyone, but I sit here and I think the industry's going to pot. Do you know what we need is a really good incident. We need a retail situation happening, because it stirs everything up and it
It
changes the
does.
narrative.
It does. It does change the narrative. And like, not to say that, yeah, we don't want that to happen, but it's
Yeah.
almost human nature is that you got to either experience it firsthand or experience it so close to you that you're thinking,
Yeah.
okay, why could this happen to us? And I think what you've just sort of, if you could just take what you've just said as almost a bit of a summary. So if you were advising a CISO team today, what's their top five list or top three list or whatever number you want to do is they should prioritize when building getting team culture change. Look, it's not a quick fix. It's not like I do these three things and you'll be absolutely fine. But what should they be thinking about in terms of building that culture or starting to build the culture in the
Yeah.
right way?
I think the first thing that I always look for when I work with an organization, and the first thing that I always ask is, where's your front door? Where are people
Hmm.
coming to? Where's the
Yeah.
easy way that I can come to you? And it's not that I need to go onto the intranet and find this thing, because what happens if I don't have the intranet? What if I can't access it?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to reach you in a time of need in
Yeah.
the most simplest way? And it quite often is security at. Doesn't
Hmm.
need to be any more complicated than that, but
Right.
you need the
Yeah.
mechanism to be able to track that and be able to respond, and you need the human skills to be able to
Okay.
communicate with that person.
Right.
um, I've had in a lot of organizations, because quite often when I work somewhere, my name will be all over the place. So Gemma, speak to
Sure.
Gemma because Gemma's a nice person. Or, I'll be running lunch and learns. I'll be,
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
hear about cyber, and that I am the face of
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
the cyber thing that's happening. And I've had on numerous occasions people calling me saying, I've done a thing. Should I be worried about this? And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm just, thanks for calling. Calm down. Everything's
Yeah.
fine.
Hmm.
You've called me, and that's the absolute right thing to do. And now we can investigate. And I'll keep all the mean people away from you because
Yeah.
you've done the right thing.
Yes.
But like, let's work it through. Let's do it nice and calmly. You have to have those skills in a team of
Right.
somebody
Okay.
who can have that conversation, almost like counseling, coaching, mentoring.
Mm.
Let's get the information out of it
Yeah.
without it being like a bull in a china shop of what did you do
Yeah.
and then what, and because it's not, they won't come back to you.
No, that's right. Okay. That's great.
So, number one, have that front door and have
Yeah.
somebody welcoming on the other side of it, your receptionist, whoever it is that is going
Mm.
to be pleasant to these people and
Yeah.
find out the
Yeah.
information, be the smiling face of the team. The other side of things is understand your people. Um, and very few organizations profile their employees. They don't know that much about them.
Mm.
They are just HR records, where they'll spend a lot of time profiling the ideal customer, right,
Mm.
because that's a revenue stream. If you don't know who this kind of profile that you're working with, your intranet pages are wrong, your whole
Mm.
internal communication strategy will be wrong. So get
Yeah.
to and even learning and development, if you don't know what these
Okay.
people are like, you cannot communicate with them effectively, so you can't
That's
change the
really good.
behavior and culture.
Yeah.
So get to know what type of people there are, and that doesn't need to be an invasive thing. Go
No,
to
no.
learning and development and ask them. Go to
Mm.
HR and ask them, and set up some little, yeah, I don't know, like working group type situations,
Yeah.
forums, where you say, we're going to do this project and I want a diverse range of people to come and help me on this, and you get to
Hmm.
know these people. Back in, I mean, I don't smoke anymore, but I used to spend a lot of time in smoking shelters and hanging out with
Yeah.
the people in the smoking shelter, because you get a really diverse mix of people that are standing out
Yeah.
there, and they're normally venting and ranting about something. So you get
Mm.
to understand where all the bodies are buried metaphorically in
Yeah. Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
what's going on in an organization. It's much more difficult with hybrid working to do this, but facilitate those bitching almost sessions where,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, let's critically analyze this situation. Same with water cooler chats, like
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
vital. So manufacture a way to have those conversations
Do that.
and be
Mm.
present. I've hung out on production lines, I've like wandered around factories chatting to
Mm.
people. I speak to the security guards. If I'm working with an organization, first thing I do is buy chocolate. I go and hang out with IT because they know who everybody is. Like,
Yes.
go and make those human connections and find out who the people are, because if you don't know that, you don't understand their ways of working. You
No.
almost need an amnesty as well. Huge issues. Every organization has huge issues with shadow IT. Culture
Hmm.
Gem is not immune to that. Shadow IT
Sure.
meaning um, systems or software that is not bought by the company that I might not necessarily know
Yeah.
exist. The biggest issue we have with things like shadow IT is if they had the tool they needed, they wouldn't be using the wrong thing. Right? So they're not doing it to annoy you, they're doing it because they're
Mm.
trying to do their job. No one is
That's
trying to
really
annoy you.
that's really good.
Right?
Actually, that's a really good summary of it, isn't it? If they had the tool they needed, they wouldn't
Yeah.
be needing to
Why
do
are
it
they
with a.
spending 12 quid on
Hmm.
Canva when,
Yeah.
if they had it and it was
They would.
assessed to be an okay, they would just be
Yeah.
using it. But shadow IT is a huge issue, and we don't even know the scale of shadow IT, and it becomes
Yeah.
really difficult to
Yeah.
challenge that. And you don't necessarily need to challenge. What you need to do is know what's happening. So these amnesty
Hmm.
situations, if like, um, volunteer this information, it's really useful, but nobody will volunteer because they've got a really bad experience of cyber people shining the interrogation lamp in their face,
And telling them
challenging,
off when they've
being
done something.
aggressive.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is, once you find out who your people are and you've got all these connections, is go and spend time with them and say, hey, what system do you use to do that? And then you understand in a conversational way, and then you can go away, assess the suitability of that system or tool, or what are the concerns here? Because yes, it violates policy, but we don't want to just punish people for violating policy when you're actually blocking them from doing their job.
Yeah, they've taken the path of
So
least resistance, haven't they, for a reason? Yeah.
absolutely. So if you then know what these shadow IT systems are, you can go and do that critical analysis piece and say, actually, did you know that that's not actually that safe? And I found an alternative that we already have as software in the business that we can allocate a license to. Do you need training? What's the situation? And that is much better than chasing policy violations all the time, or
Yeah.
finding out that there's a vulnerability in a system that you didn't know about and now your data is exposed.
Yeah.
So I think I gave you 3 there. Is that okay?
I think so. I think you did. Yeah. No, that's really good. And like, look, I think I feel like I say this on every single pod, but it's because we have such great guests like yourself, Jem, and it's really, really engaging. We could easily do another 2 hours on this
Yeah.
subject at least. But that's really useful because although it was very, it might seem doom and gloom, but there are things that need to change. They've got to change really. And I think, hopefully our listeners are taking some really good interesting nuggets away from this and try to implement some of those. And yeah, I have such high regard for everything you do, and it's always an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I love chatting to you.
Oh, I know, besties. I love talking to you too.
Thank you so much, Jem. It's really great having you on. And yeah, hopefully we'll have you on again soon. And then maybe in a few years we'll go, do you remember that time in 2025 we said how bad everything was? Isn't things great now?
Oh, I'd love that. And like I said at the beginning, I want to see the book up there next time. So I'm just
Oh
going to
yeah, go on.
shamelessly plug the
Go for
book.
it. Go for it. Quick plug on the book then.
Okay, if that's all right. So yeah,
Yeah.
1st of October is the launch of the print version of my
Yeah.
book, which is called Access Denied: The Security Risk of Ignoring Accessibility. And it's practical advice on how to actually embed security, accessibility into security and compliance. There's checklists, there's frameworks for implementation. It's not just me going, oh, isn't it all a bit rubbish?
Yeah.
It's a usable book where you can go through and make a difference in your organization. I think it's 340 pages of excellent words that I've written
Oh, I
down
mean,
with my GCSEs.
I think actually anyone who does have the opportunity to get an early edition of that, I think it'd be really, really interesting. It's really great to have kind of your experience and knowledge funneled into something like that. So I know for one, I'll definitely be getting a copy.
See if I can sneak you an early edition.
Right, that'd be fantastic.
I'll
Jem,
write something lovely in there.
Yeah,
Like, don't call me
please.
when I'm sending you reels.
Jem, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for carving out time to be a guest on our pod.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Cheers.
Take
Thanks.
care.